Hi, hello, friends. So, this is the few moments before the actual interview where I need to do all the technical setup and make sure that everything is going well. So, just give me a moment, hang around, grab your drinks, and let me adjust whatever that needs to be adjusted. Okay, now we are good to go. Hello, friends. Good evening. I hope you had your dinner. If you're in Singapore and if you're in India or in Pakistan, then I hope you are about to have dinner because you're a bit behind us. All right, so let's start. Now, in life, there's going to be tough time. We all know that. And for a lot of us, we are going through tough times now. Being motivated to get through the most difficult moments is great. But what if, despite our best efforts, we are not seeing any results. So that's why I am so glad to know my guest today, Ramesh Muthusamy. I call him a change agent because he is someone who is always so generous in helping people transform and get to the next level. Let me bring Ramesh into the studio. Hello, Ramesh.
Hello, Dean. How are
Yes,
you? I'm
I'm
so
so
excited.
excited.
You keep me backstage. I'm so excited. No, it feels like ta-da.
Okay, Ramesh, I know that your company Alviga is in the business of transforming organizations, and you have been doing this for so long and you're so good at it. So that's why I invited you for this topic because if you can transform a big organization, surely you can transform one individual. And I know you have done that a lot for me. You are an inspiration for me, Ramesh. So I want to share that inspiration with everyone else on my Facebook and whoever's going to share this video. All right. So welcome once again. So let's just get right into the topic, right?
Sure, let's do that.
So how to keep going when nothing seems to work. So when we hit a huge challenge, the motivated among us will do our very best to overcome the situation. But when all efforts don't work, we say, I've tried everything. The truth is that we only tried what we know and not really everything. So
Yeah.
how can we know that we really have not tried everything?
I think.
The big word everything. How can we get past that filter?
So I think the first piece that you brought up, which was during the tough times, right? And I think I resonate with that because in my journey there have also been many tough situations, and it's always good to kind of look at it as to what's happening within ourselves. Some of the tough situations are happening because of ourselves, and some of it could be family related issues, and also could be career related issues. I think you can talk about those few pieces, and now you can also see the career. I mean, the global sentiment about certain issues of equality are also there, right? So I was very intrigued when you asked me to talk about during the tough times, how do we keep going? So there are a few ways. One, I think you can always go into it bulldozing your way through, being just oblivious to it and just going through it. Numbing yourself is usually one way of how people do it. So I remember last time during national service, right? They used to have this saying that tough times don't last, but tough men do, right? So you just switch off and
Yeah.
you have a disembodied experience of the whole thing. You just do it And you can see people doing that on a daily basis when they are going to work sometimes, when they're really
mm,
not connected to stuff. But it's a tough thing.
mm.
I've seen teachers, going to school being so disconnected from everything. Now, is it
Oh, yeah.
healthy? Is it useful? One thing. But I think the other piece would be like, can I do it while feeling all of the emotions and really being connected to how is it? My approach is always be gentle, right? That we're not out to prove anything to anyone. We don't need validation from anyone else outside. I think we got to know ourselves and take it in a way that is healthy for us and it's sustainable for us. And it's okay to take a rest on the park bench and have an ice cream, and maybe chit chat with a buddy. So I think when it comes to tough times, to not look at it as a sprint, but rather than a long, nice hike. Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm always very curious because when I'm in tough times, despite knowing all the psychology of getting through tough times,
Yeah.
at that moment, I forget everything.
Yeah.
So I'm actually in a very, or I have been in very unresourceful state. So what are some of the symptoms or signs that can, that I can look out for to know that I'm actually in an unresourceful state?
Okay.
Okay, before you answer, just give me a moment. I think there's some echo. I think friends, you can hear it, but I've tried to do something. These technical glitches will happen every now and then, so I just bear with me. Okay, Ramesh.
Okay.
Your-
So I think the question around how do you know the symptoms, right? How do I know the
Mm,
signs? I think the one thing which I've come to appreciate is to have an embodied experience,
mm,
like to really connect. And I think this goes in many dimensions. And you have had such wonderful guests on your stream, and I watch all of them
mm.
who talk about
Nice.
mindfulness and being connected. Maybe today we can use a pragmatic approach. And I think if
Okay.
we would look at energy levels, right? So, do you feel like you can conquer something? Or are you feeling on that day like you need to take a break or you need to be in a lull? There's a lot of stigma that goes around with lazing because it's
Yes.
not seen as a good thing, it's seen as something bad. But I remember in geography in the past, we learned about this thing called fallowing, where you just leave the land for a while to fallow. So I'm not lazing, I'm fallowing, I'm just
What's
taking
that?
a
What's following? This is the first time I've heard that word
like
in that
okay,
context.
come on. Okay, so basically you don't use a piece of agricultural land continuously through the year,
That's right.
and you
Yeah.
try to do crop rotation, and sometimes you just leave the land for a while to let it rejuvenate and get all of its nutrients back and its balance back.
Hmm.
And the same thing with us, because we live in a world where the approach to time is quite mechanistic. It's like broken down into bits and pieces, and you have to X amount of things to accomplish. I don't work very well in that kind of my relationship with time is more flexible, meaning I see it as just stretches. And there are some stretches where I feel like I can go for very long periods, and it feels good. It's energizing, right? And there are also some days when I feel like, okay, today I don't think I want to do long stretch. I want to do short stretches of work. So I think one of the challenges over there would be if I try to be so mechanical in my life, like I have to do this and it's so robotic, then
Hmm.
I'm not sure how much of your creativity and your best self you can
Hmm.
bring into your work. So I think we need to have a understanding of ourselves, what works for you. So I want to ask you back, Dean, what kind of approach works for you for time? The breaking it up into pieces or looking at it in terms of stretches of time?
Well, if I were to look at the way I work, I usually work in a block of time. So when I get into the flow to complete a task, let's say, then I will do all the way because I'm kind of like mentally motivated to finish it. And the moment I finish it, I cannot straight away jump to the next task. I need to take a break,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, reset.
Yeah.
But I should also want to recognize the fact that on some days, I just can't do it. Like I'm just not at the best state,
Yeah.
mentally. And I do like what you say, I do feel very, very uh, guilty for saying, you know what, today I'm just gonna take a break since it's not working. Like my mind is not, the gears are a bit rusty today. So where did this stigma to take a break, right? So
Yeah.
against it, where did it come from? Do you know?
Okay, so thank you for sharing. But Dean, it's always good to just catch up with a cup of coffee.
Yes.
It's a lot of things which I also had to explore and experiment.
Mm,
So as you mentioned, El Vigor, right? So we talk a lot about invigoration. So maybe I just talk about that, and maybe
sure.
that could give a good platform to discover. whether you're feeling invigorated on that day. So instead of looking at life in a time management, but rather energy management, which Tony Robbins, a lot of people talk about this, right? So I think it's a great concept. We have discovered through our work, there are three elements that makes you feel invigorated. The first one is a sense of unification. Big word. What does it mean? It just means, are you feeling all of yourself on that day? Like, are you feeling like all parts of yourself, your mind, body, emotions are all there with you? It doesn't have to be in a positive state, but at least it's there with you. You're sitting with it. And sometimes we're just so tired, or we're just so disorientated, or the toughness is so much that we become so fractured. There are so many pieces which are moving about. So I always use tons of if you ever visit my room, right, and my wife will tell you I have tons and tons of journal books, and just
So
sitting.
you seem to be a big fan of journaling, a believer of
You can't
journaling.
imagine. Journaling and drawing, and just keeping the mind occupied. Just wanted to show you some stuff, like just drawing out stuff and seeing what's
Oh,
going
nice.
on. Always helps to kind of first of all be unified before you get started. The second element we found is that heart of wanting to do excellence. What does that mean? It's like you feel like you want to do something really well versus I'm going to just get it done. I mean, even the email that you sent for this live stream has so much work put into it, and I'm like, oh my goodness,
I
it
didn't
kind of
realize
shows
it.
the wanting to do something well. That gives you another clue of whether you are not feeling up to it. And the last one is, are you feeling creative that day? Are you able to allow the creative work to actually happen? So I have a conclusion which I have kept for many years, which is the moments and the days in which you do creative work are the days which are worth living.
Okay,
Where, yeah, please.
please finish.
So I mean, if I KPI my life in that way, right? That if I was doing creative work on that day is worth my time and my moments. Like right now, we are in the process of creating a dialogue, a conversation, and there are also our friends who are tuning in from all over, listening, and we are co-creating a live experience. Well, that's meaningful. That's worthwhile, right? But when I'm just asked to do something which is not creative, it just feels something's missing on that day for me. Yeah.
Mm. But you see, there are times when we cannot rely on a creative day. Work needs to get done.
Yeah.
So it's just like hard and fast. You just get this done. No creativity involved. It's all processes.
Yeah.
How do I keep motivated to go on then?
Okay, so a rule of thumb is always do the tough things early in the morning, the stuff that you really don't want to do, but you have to get it out of the way, so that it doesn't lean into your emotions so much, but it's just something that you fundamentally want to do. So one thing which I picked up from a productivity consultant was that in order for you to be able to do that, you need to end every day by figuring out what is the, the things you don't want to do, and put it in your calendar first thing in the morning for the next day. Because when we sit down and we then try to figure out what I want to do for the day, the stuff that we don't want to do gets pushed down the list. So if I
That's very true.
pre-planned it the day before, I thought, hey, that's something. He asked me, like, what is it that tomorrow you don't want to do? And then I mentioned something, and then he said, okay, then do that as the first thing in the morning and get it done in 45 minutes because you know it's painful. So the rest of the day can be spent doing things that you truly enjoy.
But that would make me not want to wake up since I'm self-employed and running a business.
Well, we have that challenge to kind of overcome as well.
Okay, so just again, Vivek just commented that there's echo. Yes, I'm totally aware of it. Before we went live, I tried my very best. We tried our very best. And unfortunately, the echo is on me. But the good thing is, the wisdom is coming from my guest, Ramesh. So it's okay. We just live with it, right? Okay. Okay, so let's talk about external influences.
Okay.
So there are times when we are in a tough moment in our life, very challenging. There are a lot of things that we can control within ourselves, but when it comes to external influences, there's really nothing much that we can do. For example, it could be our family, it could be our partner, spouse, it could be a very toxic work environment. So, what can we do, Ramesh?
Okay. So just give me a moment, yeah. So when it comes to the external influences, right? There are so many, and you can look at it as a influence or a stimulation. If I was to really look at it from a psychological frame, perhaps, right? It's just a stimulation, and it creates, it aggravates us. Some of this stimulation may have an emotional impact on us because it's residual. For example, if it is mom who is saying something to us, and we have some issues, surrounding mom, then it creates another level of trigger. Maybe scoping it a little bit would be useful. So when we talk about external, what are we looking at? You can look at external things that you have a chance of influencing. For example, you're at Starbucks, you're doing something, and then the person next to you is on the phone really loud. So, hey, that is an external environment, but there is possibly something I could do within my skill, my knowledge to be able to do, right? I could either approach the person and have a conversation and say, hey, or I could shift myself or put on my noise cancellation headphones. There's a variety of things I can actually do. So I think it'll be nice to kind of also segment the external thing into things that I have potential influence on, and then you can look at stuff that you completely have no influence on it. Like when you're driving or riding, right? You can't really 100% control the people around us. So it's about what I can do. And I think the level of awareness, if you have never done it before, I think always there's going to be new things that pops up. But if I've driven down this way many times, I kind of know how people react. So I can still, one extent, prepare myself for that encounter. So when I travel through immigration across ASEAN, every immigration has its own quirks, and some of it, for the life of me, I don't understand, right? So I've kind of figured out like, okay, that's something I cannot really control the way they treat me, but I'm going to do something about it, like, which is I'm going to make it super easy for them to profile, audit me, do stuff. That's not my Rosa Parks moment, basically, I've decided on that. So when it comes to external, there are things that I can have an influence on, and there are things I can't, but I can still be prepared when those things do pop up in my life, if it's happening many times.
I like what you said. We have to be prepared to things that are beyond our control.
Yeah.
Because if you're prepared, then you can manage your emotions, right? You don't get angry so much. You don't get out of balance internally.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think that makes a lot of sense. You put it so nicely. I took so long to say it. You said it so quickly.
that's my job, I guess. Okay, so talking about emotions, when it comes to tough time, negative emotions rise up.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter how motivated a person you are, it will come
Yeah.
up. Can you give us some tips on how to, I don't know, should I say manage is the word? Manage the emotions so that we can keep going despite whatever's happening, whatever we are feeling. Your thoughts.
Okay, so both of us have got background in coaching. So I think the coaching approach is the unknown is where your greatest gifts and your biggest pitfalls are going to be, right? The unknowns. So I'm a big fan of figuring out what are the trigger points and hotspots within myself. I like what Jung said. Jung says that which irritates you about the people around you, it's often a shadow that lives within you that you need to work on, right? So when you see a selfish person and you are kind of pissed off with them, there is a possible residual thing about yourself and your relationship to the whole idea of
Being
generosity
generous.
and whatnot. You could have, right?
Mm-mm.
So I think when it comes to the being prepared part, I cannot even after so many years imagine a human being being so ready and so prepared, so in balance that nothing actually shifts them. I'm not sure that that's how I want to live my life. Like, for example, if I'm living life, I want to experience it for all of what it is. And maybe that's my my INFJ, popping up or creeping out,
That's
right?
your
What we call it.
MBTI, right?
Yeah, the MBTI profile. But it's that I want to experience the fullness of what everything is. But at the same time, being a witness to all of those things, because I think it shapes us, versus trying to, I think that this idea of trying to be in control, um, it doesn't work for me, and I think it doesn't work for a lot of people, because how can you be in control, right? Is you have to be so confined. But if I'm expansive and I'm opened up, then I'm willing to explore things that hurts me, or things that I know have potential to aggravate me. For example, for me, one of my hot buttons would be child abuse. Parents who don't treat their children too
Oh,
well.
yeah.
It has always been a hot button for me. And I know that when I'm in certain situations, I'm going to be seeing that, whether it be it on the train or I see someone else doing it. So then I asked myself, what is it exactly that I'm feeling here? What is it, the
Mm.
injustice for that person who doesn't have a voice or the ability to push back the level of oppression that's happening here. So I think the balancing process would be uh, to take it all in and allow it
Mm.
to process, so we have a full experience of it, rather
So
than
you're
trying to
saying that
control. Yeah.
what you're saying in one word is acceptance.
Yeah.
Acceptance
Absolutely.
of what's happening around us at that very moment, right?
And
Because
maybe if I can just expand it just by a tad bit,
sure.
it'll be the willingness to accept. I've come
Yes,
to
I think
understand
that.
that it's easy to say the word acceptance, a betrayal, a job
Mm.
loss. It's easy. It sounds like
Mm.
almost a logical thing, right? I give you the
Mm.
logic,
Mm.
accept it. But I think we also need to give some credit to the willingness to accept, which suggests that I'm not there yet today, but I'm willing to see if I can accept it. And it might take a long time, and maybe you never will 100% accept it. But at least it's a journey, that healing journey that we are on to pick it up. So I think that helps us to deal with the toughness of life.
I
You
think
melt it with the willingness.
you have just said something really golden. It's like it's not just about acceptance because that word makes it look very simple, right? But the
Yeah.
willingness to accept, that's one. I really like that. And the second is you don't have to when you say you are willing to accept, you don't have to accept 100%. You
Mm-hmm.
can accept to a certain degree and then just just know that the other things you have some strong emotions about. Okay,
Yeah.
Bhavani Perasamy has a question. So she says, or I think this is a question. What if the people around us push us down and we try to rise up by working on our emotions?
Okay. What if people push us down and we try? Ooh, sounds like a toxic environment.
It is a toxic environment, I
So,
think. Yeah.
pragmatically, if you have an opportunity to depart from that group, to
Mm,
disconnect, to divorce yourself from that group, because there are many people out there in the world, who are probably going to embody you and bring you in much
mm,
better. But sometimes circumstances do not allow us to do that, right? So it's something like my grandma used to say, like, if you walk down this path and a snake bites you, why do you keep going there, Because the snake does what the snake does. So I'm not saying people are snakes, yeah. But I thought it was a really nice way of putting it. If you know that that pathway is painful, then why do you keep doing that? Why do you keep having these people in the circle? And what is it that you are seeking there? Is it
mm.
are you seeking the pain? So I know that gets into like deep
Oh,
territory, right?
that's
Of
deep.
is there an addiction to wanting pain because it's familiar,
Mm,
right? A lot of psychology points to that human beings like familiarity, even though it could be highly dysfunctional and toxic. So some people keep wondering, why am I constantly being like this? Why do I keep getting the same type of clients?
mm, mm,
Okay, and sometimes is it something that you also do in order to keep yourself in that consistent traumatized space, perhaps? Tough questions to ask, but I think that's what keeps us going during tough times, because you don't want to make it any tougher than it needs to be, right? Some clients, some
mm,
family, you have to work with them for whatever reason.
mm,
But I think just trying to figure that piece out, like, why am I still hanging out with them? Because you have a choice. One
mm,
thing which I picked up also through all my studies and stuff, which is this sentence, which is about safety, right? There's a
mm.
part of us that a deep part of us that seeks safety, and sometimes we seek safety and refuge in things which are not so healthy, like basically. We seek refuge in people that are hurting us, but because they're familiar, it creates safety. Like how children like to hang on
That's
to like
right.
a
Yeah.
doll or
Yeah.
something, right?
Mm, mm, mm.
And it could be causing the child allergies, but the child keeps wanting to have that.
It is something familiar for them.
Yeah, something
So they
familiar. So
don't
I
want to
think,
move away from something that's familiar to something that is unknown,
yeah,
right? That's what you're
yeah.
saying. Yeah.
So that I think would be something to really unpack and explore, and take your time with
Mm,
it, because it's not as simple as I just can walk away from it. So if people
mm.
are doing that, then I can be mentally prepared, and I think everybody has a threshold, Labawani.
Yeah.
You know, like we have choices. So the thing which I have learned over the years is I am safe, right? People can come and go in my life, and I'm safe. And
Mm,
I like that line so much, because it kind of allows me to let people in and also let people out, and I'm safe.
mm.
It doesn't have to be so melodramatic.
This is another golden thing that you have said. Because when you feel safe or allow yourself to be safe, you are more open to other people, right? You don't form a wall and try to prevent yourself from getting hurt or getting whatever, bullied or
Yeah.
being in a toxic environment.
and
Excuse
and
me.
I liken it to like I can make choices which are healthy for me. So if you feel like you want to have a huge social circle and you want to have a lot of relationships, great. You could also be another kind of person who figured that that's not something you need in your life, and it's not for
Mm,
someone to judge you. So you could move to a remote part, have a more solitary life. That's perfectly fine. I think it's figuring out what is it that works for me,
absolutely.
and not
Mm,
just bulldozing our way through all the tough times over and over again, because they are turning up, especially if they're similar, for some reason, isn't it? So reorganize ourselves and make those bold decisions to make our lives healthier.
awesome. I just want to segue into another painful topic like job loss,
Yeah.
family conflicts. These things happen during our lockdown season now,
Yes.
right? And I know that job loss is going to happen for many more months to come,
Yeah.
right? So uh, I think it is something that needs to be addressed. How can we think beyond our emotions and spheres of knowledge to find a new way forward? Because we tend to think of solution within our sphere of knowledge and experience. So how can we break from that and go to something new?
I think there were two ideas in there which I heard, Dean. One was the family aspect, and the other was the career. So maybe we go with the pragmatic one first, which would be the career. I
Mm,
think if you look at the Maslow's hierarchy, right, one of the base ones would be about safety, and money generally also comes under one of the more fundamental ones, because it is the thing that allows you to have a lot of other things like your safety, shelter, and food. So
mm,
when it
mm,
gets hit at the core, I think there's like, it's like the whole building is being shaken from the ground up. So my because we also do employability work, and you also have done employability
yes.
work, it's to have a practical approach to this. So there will be the emotional aspect that needs to be handled. At the same time, we don't have to stop the job search. So there are multiple things that needs to start kicking in different countries. They have probably different employment officers. So in Singapore, we
Mm,
have the WSG, we have like E2I, we have all these wonderful organizations that
mm,
actually help people, right? So, but the willingness to go and believe and trust the process, I think that will be important, because the thing about a job is like, what was the job to you, right? And I think sometimes we make it out to be so much of our identity, right? Like, you're not the job. But when the job is not there, and I think the other aspect is, how will you let go? Was it in a dignified manner? Did you have enough time to prepare? Was it abrupt? So, okay, if you were retrenched and you didn't feel anything, it could possibly also mean you didn't care about your company, lah. You know,
oh, that's true. Yeah, yeah. I never thought
and
about
you
that.
and you're waiting for this day to come, right? But if you did feel something, it could be many factors, right? It's about whether you feel like you're no longer important or are purposeful, and then
Mm,
there are also the other idea of why me, why not others, especially if it was not
mm,
company wide. Our value, a lot of insecurities that we may have already had start to surface. So always approach it with gentleness and give yourself time and space. Get some professional help if you can afford it and if it's available to you. Today, coaching is done virtually. I mean, a call with you for even 45 minutes does a big thing. I'm a big believer of coaches who can offer a third party, non
mm.
emotional. I mean, if you ask your friend, I mean, they will always like, hey, come on,
Yeah.
don't worry, right? But sometimes that doesn't really help us, because sometimes you
And they
really have
may,
to go and
sorry, they may actually make the situation worse by saying something wrong, giving
yeah,
some opinion that you didn't ask for.
possibly. I think we
Yeah.
have learned to be more mindful, which is why I think when we interact, we are more on a friend basis
Mm,
versus. But when we are in a professional, environment, there's a lot more nuance to it, right? What
that's
can
right.
say be said. So I think for when it comes to career or job loss, trying to bounce back quickly always helps. Use that force to kind of bounce back, come back with like a vengeance.
Mm,
Um, but that also means that before you were retrenched, you may have already fallen short on many of the preparation work. Like if anybody today
mm,
is in a career thinking that I have such a secure job and they believe 100% to their in their heart that nothing will happen, I think it's living in a delusional space, because it's not a question of whether your job will change. The question is when will it
Right.
change and how will it change. So sometimes it changes within your current company, but sometimes you have to leave. So having proper career planning ahead of time. Today, I think this conversation is more than ever before, because in the past, people don't think about career planning. They just talk about having a job and just evolving. So I think for the first piece, which would be the career aspect of it, try to get back on the road as quickly as possible. Don't lull too much. One too many late nights with ice cream and having a pity party can lead to some habits that will be tough to kick.
But we
But
do need that space, right, to kind of
yeah,
get ourselves together or
your
allow
window lah, basically.
the emotions
Yeah.
to arise and
Yeah, to
go
deal with it.
forward.
Basically, there will be four lah: denial, anger, depression,
Mm,
and trying to like reconcile with what's happened. It's always going to happen for different people. We work with people like that. As entrepreneurs, I think we go through this consistently when things projects don't work
yes,
out.
yes.
So but also not, I mean, the growth mindset helps, I believe. Like,
Mm,
don't think about the end goal, like, think about the process I need to follow on a daily basis
absolutely.
and learn something along the way. Now the other
Mm.
one, which was on family, it's like, well, where do we even start, right? As
It's so
Virginia said,
complex.
Virginia Satir said every family is alike in the way in which they are dysfunctional, or something to that extent.
Mm.
So she said, if any family comes up to you and says they are not dysfunctional, they probably would be having one of the most, which is what makes drama so exciting to watch, right? Because it's watching the dysfunctionality of human relationships, but in a Korean language, right? Or in
Yes.
Taiwanese drama. It's the
And all
same
crammed into
thing.
1 hour.
Yeah, all crammed into 1 hour. And so I think when it comes to family, you have to have a commitment to want to really make a breakthrough and getting professional help. I think in Asia, in Singapore, it's really, over the years, it has become more of a dialogue. People have accepted it that this is something important. It is not something you can whisk away. There are things that you can do to improve. So I'm very happy to be in a community, together with you and many of our other friends and coaches who share this philosophy of always trying to heal ourselves and make ourselves a little bit better. Not because we think something's broken inside, but we just want to have an exploration. What more can I learn from this, and
You know,
transform that? Yeah.
I've known you for a long time, and I'm so happy that you're one person who's always like, ready to help someone get over their challenges. Uh, yeah, I've seen you and I've seen you in action, so you're always inspiring to me. Have you ever
Mhm.
worked with someone you try to, either in a professional way, professional coaching setting, or as a friend, you help someone to move forward, but despite your best effort, it just didn't work? So I want
Yeah,
to know what's
plenty.
not working in that.
Okay, so I think when I first got in touch with NLP, right, and I think NLP is a fantastic tool, and there's so much depth to it, but it also has so many flavors. Like every shop can say they sell vanilla ice cream, but really, is it really vanilla? And it's only when I went to do my advanced training in psych and counseling, I began to see how a lot of these uh, masters, basically, who figured a lot of things about human thought processes and emotions, how they arrived at something. I think sometimes you need to know how it was arrived, and having the discipline to kind of pick up the ethics of working with people. So I think when I first started out, all of that was like not that important, the whole ethics aspect, because it is because there are different types of people who can help, right? So there are psychiatrists, there are people who are psychologists, and there's that whole medical fraternity that is, I think, also equally important and relevant in helping people. Because if it's a neurochemical hormonal problem, I think some level of medication helps that person to, and it's up to the doctor, because you have to, kind of take feedback from the professionals. And then there is the rest of the people who are also in the help space. And I think knowing that is important, because I've come to, when I do reflection back, like, why didn't it work? Because I think I wanted them to change more than they wanted to change themselves. Because it was more of an ego trip, right? Like,
Oh, I got this person changed. Yeah.
yeah, I NLP'd this person to quit smoking. Yeah. And then you might have a whole group to kind of cheer for you. So I think the intention, I mean, in NLP, it's covered intention. it being covered on a flip chart versus really having a relationship with the idea of intention are two different things. So what's the intent? So I think a lot of times when things didn't work, it was because my intentions were not really altruistic. It was not about the person, you know. It was about me trying to do something to them to make the change happen and the drama of it all. Because I think some change is quiet, it's subtle, and some people they don't want to make the change, and they needed to talk to you to realize they didn't want it, they didn't need it, and that's it. And so I think not getting overly entrenched in that work. So I think to just cycle back to the question you asked, have there been times it didn't work? I think it yeah, because I didn't have a sincere conversation up front about what exactly they wanted out of all of this. And almost having like a power relationship with them where I was the one who knew how to fix them, right? And they needed
Fix
fixing.
them. Yeah.
But I think all that has changed, Ladin, you know, as we grow
Is it
older.
age? Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems like when what you're saying is if we have uh, this intention to help someone, we need to check whether they are in a space or in a state that wants to be helped.
Yeah. Asking those sincere questions, authentic questions, you know, like,
Yeah.
do I really want to make this change? Like, if you want to lose weight, right? The question is like, do you really want to lose the weight? And what's driving you to do this, you know? If it is about filling a void or a gap versus it's something I really find is fun and enjoyable, I think that's important. And getting support. I think that's the thing, you know, and so it's about the supporting relationship. And in our work in doing change work, we also share that with our clients because sometimes they're expecting us to come from outside and think that we will make the change for them.
It's like,
It's like how do
and
I
then
even do
change.
that?
Yeah.
I would love to, but I think it's a supporting relationship. So we are evolving. The conversations are evolving. The relationships are also evolving together with it. And I think that's the key.
Okay. So one more question.
Sure.
You know, when we are going through tough time, we keep doing things, and sometimes nothing is changing.
Mm-hmm.
So now we like stepping out of it. You know that sometimes change comes like an exponential curve. So you don't see the change very much. It takes some time before it goes up.
Yeah.
So what can I do? What can we do during those times when you're doing your best effort and things are not changing? How can we keep going and not give up?
Yeah, well, these are like metaphysical slash philosophical questions on a Friday evening for everybody who's tuning in. And I think how I like to take the last question would be like my take on it, basically. But I think everybody needs to also think about it. So I think culture, right? Culture, the environment that we are in, and that set point in time, not just based on continents, because today I think we are in a global space. So culture. So some cultures put so much emphasis on achieving, right?
Mm.
And because of that, everything is quantified through achievement.
KPIs.
Yeah, KPIs, right? So the reason why this pops up in our head, like I'm not getting anywhere, is because we're not seeing these achievements,
Mm.
and it's painful, right? When we work on it for such a long time and we don't see it, and then the next thing that brings a lot of misery to the human condition is comparing. If you want to really get unhappy really fast, just keep comparing yourself with other people, right? That's the quickest way. Just compare, right, to someone else,
Or just
which is
go on
why
social media and
yeah.
see how fabulous everyone's life is compared to yours.
Um,
That's a
so
sure way to get depressed.
I was fortunate enough. My name is Ramesh, and it is actually named after Ramayana. I'm sure it's quite a famous Indian epic mythology.
Mm.
Indonesians also follow it. So my dad used to always remind me about Lord Rama, right, the main character in that. And he said even for him, right, to have some deep realizations in life, he was set off into the forest, as in like they um, exiled him into the forest for 14
Mm.
years for him to learn about relationships and life and honesty and integrity and a whole lot of stuff. So then when I reflected back on my life and I asked how many years am I willing to invest to really understand myself, and what if I'm not interested in the get rich quick now, you know?
Mm.
What if I'm more interested in the understanding more and deeper versus the achieving stuff. And I think all this has to come together with our relationship to happiness, right? Like, if you're not happy now, wherever you are, with whatever you have, at least at the baseline, right? And the baseline can be very different for different people. Then what makes you so sure that when you have all of these other things which you have somehow, you know, said you when you have, you will be happy? How do you know that? You don't. So I don't think life is also very healthy living in this never ending, never ceasing journey where if I get this XYZ. So I think all of that comes together to bundle up as a narrative that then tells us like, oh, maybe I'm not achieving anything. Says who? You know, when someone says that to me, I'm like, really? Is that what you think? Okay. So you think you have not achieved anything at all in the last 5 days when you think you have not done much? But there was a lot of thinking, a lot of pushing and pulling. But I think there's also a balance. That's why support is important, right? To have yourself accountable to something. So what is it that you really want to be held accountable for versus I have to be accountable? Because that's a very unsustainable way of approaching things. So I know it's very simple question, tough to answer, which is a lot of
No,
relationship questions that comes up.
but I think you have really answered it very well. Made me think a lot of things that happen in our minds when we are experiencing that I'm not going anywhere, and then that thought slowly spiral down to negativity, and you think that that's enough for you to just stop and just change your path. But actually, you're saying that no, don't think about the end result, think about the process, right?
Um, I only can say that I'm super lucky, Ladine, to have had awesome parents, especially my dad, who taught us the virtue of being really good at something and that the level of patience it takes. And he role modeled that for us. Even when he painted a wall, he took a long time, you know. And my mom used to gripe, like, she says, oh, yeah, when you ask your father to do it, something that can be done in half an hour will take 5 days. But he's meticulous. He wants to pursue it with excellence. And I think there's that knowing in him that at the end of the whole process, there was the full, excellence put into it. So that helps in learning something, studying something to go deep. And I think there's always this danger of jumping ship, jumping lanes. So when I speak to some fellow facilitators, I think sometimes my comments are unwelcome when I ask of them to reflect deeply as to why they choose to pursue something. It's okay to pursue on trend topics. It's important to be customer centric, but at the same time, reflecting back to, is that really something I can see that you have been a brand person for the longest time, PR and brand,
Yeah.
always wanting to make people look good, wanting to present the best versions of themselves. And I've seen you do magic with people. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, and I think there's that feedback loop of wanting doing that and then getting that feedback versus always doubting ourselves. Am I on the right track? So be patient with wherever you may be, and your achievements. Many of it could be internal. It takes time
That's
for it to
true.
really come up from the surface. I think
We
I've
never
been
really,
reading this about.
we
Sorry.
never, most of us, I don't know, I'm just saying based on my own experience, most of us don't acknowledge the internal achievements.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you brought it up. Yeah.
Yeah, and things are changing. I mean, even having all these conversations, people who are catching it and maybe watching it in replay,
Mm.
um, you're not worthy because you achieved something. You're worthy
Mm.
because you're worthy. And I know that sounds like
Wow, that's deep. I'm going to
yeah.
think throughout this
So
weekend that
I think
line.
if as we are wrapping and we are coming to the parting shots, right? I think um, unconditional love, right? It's what is unconditional love, and having that question this weekend will be useful. Like, what conditions have I set upon myself in order to qualify for my own love and my own affirmation? If I lost 5 kg, if I had this, if I had more money, if I had this. And then that becomes also possibly the lens in which we view the world around us versus saying unconditional love would, it's, I think it's a pursuit, like a pledge. It's a pursuit
Mm.
of saying,
Can I just,
what if,
just butt
yeah,
in and say
sure.
what you're saying is when we focus on what we don't have and go after those things, we are always having that feeling of lack. That something's
Yeah.
missing in our life,
Yes.
right?
This has also come up in your previous streams. I remember that
Yes.
feeling of lack, and I think maybe if I could just add more color to that, it is also becoming so familiar with that lack that
Mm.
it's so funny that we are trying to fill the gap but yet we are so familiar with the lack that it needs to always be there. So always
Wow,
finding something that's lacking. But you're
that's
full and you're
another golden
complete.
moment. Can you please repeat that? I just love it.
No, I mean, just to draw a line, a thread between all of your different streams.
Mm,
One of the previous streams, you had a conversation with one of your guests on lack, and I just wanted to add a little bit of color to that and say that um, we also may have become so familiar with the lack, so
mm,
comfortable with the lack that although we're trying to get rid of it, but there's also this need for it to always be there. So are we always finding new lacks, and is that what's making things tough? So I mean, as you gave me a lot of time to think about this whole live stream today, what's so tough? What's really so tough? Or have we now, we believe it's tough, and so it is tough. Because I'm quite sure if I told my grandma all this is tough, she'd be like, try raising 11 children. you know it's subjective, but I'm not taking the challenges that people are facing on a daily basis, uh, but I think we have so much potential. I think that's the one word I love, potential, right?
mm.
We have so much potential for creativity and excellence, and really being a unifying force in whichever community that we want. And when we go, we take nothing with us. We only leave behind our legacy, our friendships, and stuff. So I think trying to figure that out helps a lot.
And I always hear this. People who, when you share your tough times to people, then they will just like tap on your shoulder and say, you know what, Dean, just take it one day at a time.
Yeah.
Is that a wise approach? Should I just take it one day at a time?
Wow. I think if you're going through a crisis, that is pretty much the only thing you can do. Get through the day when
Wow.
you're going through a crisis. I think, really, honestly, Dean, if you have just been told that someone in your family has been diagnosed with a critical illness, the
Mm,
loss of a child, I mean, even getting through that day,
it's so tough.
it's insane. But
Yeah.
using that as a long term strategy, I don't think that will work as well. Because what
Mm,
does that mean when you say that you live one day at a time? Does it mean I do not care about tomorrow, or I'm in so much pain right now I just need assistance? So, and my answers are always going to be as
yes,
gray as it gets,
I
right?
know you,
Yeah,
and it's
I
always like that. But
never
I
wanting to,
like that.
because I think it kind of takes away something when you try to put something in black and white, and it plays into the whole making things simple when it's not. Because think about it, right now there are people in hospitals who are in deep state of shock and crisis and trauma, because someone they love is in an operation, or it's something really bad, and I don't think there's any capacity in them to think far. But it's
Mm,
really about making to the day, and in that moments, I think it's very important to have support, get supported, ask for friends, tune in to anything that helps you to kind of just make it through, whether be it spiritual or otherwise. Yeah.
mm.
uh, but beyond that, I think, to build that life, if you want to have shade, you needed to have planted the tree some time ago.
Ah,
So
it's
shade
okay.
doesn't come about. So everybody appreciates the shade, but how many people are planting the tree, right? So
Wow.
build your
Another
build
deep
your own
moment
future
here.
shade. Build your own shade. Yeah, that's what I would say. So plant things early and let it grow, whatever it may
So
be. It will grow.
I think as you were talking about the taking one day at a time, a thought came to me that when you take one day at a time, it gives space to your mind, right? Because
Yeah.
you're not thinking about the future, you're not burdened by it, you're not burdened by the past, you're just thinking about that one day. It gives you space to think about how to move on and keep
Yeah, that's what I would
going.
say. So I think you always do such a fantastic job in saying what I wanted to say, but in such a nice way. Which
Thank
is, I
you.
think, we need to give ourselves some space. I think that's something that came out from the beginning of the conversation.
That's right.
That what's the rush? What's the rush?
Mm,
Where are you going? Enjoy the journey, enjoy the process, um, and take that as part of the journey. Enjoy the happy moments, like the process. Not new stuff, it's stuff that we all have heard of before. But sometimes we need a reflection moment to kind of think about, hey, have I kind of like forgotten to enjoy the
mm.
day?
So on that note,
Yeah.
friends, you have heard all these golden nuggets coming out of Ramesh. And I am not the least bit surprised because I've known him for a long time and it's always been like this. So, Ramesh, thank you so much
It's been
because now it's time for us to give our friends space and give ourselves space to move on and enjoy the evening and enjoy tomorrow and our life again. No
Dean,
matter what happens.
I also wanted to say that there are many people who are doing streams, and um, I think your devotion to the craft of making it professional and the way you make your guests feel is really in itself a masterclass. And
Wow.
I'm sure those of
Okay.
them who have had the blessed opportunity of doing a live stream with Dean. So
Thank you.
um, we need people of different colors and different flavors and different
Absolutely.
perspective to make our world richer. So thank you for allowing us to have this conversation and having all of us in a community. We
Mm.
really, on behalf of everyone else, we
Thank
appreciate
you.
you as a community builder.
I appreciate every single one of your guests and you also and many more guests to come. Okay, friends, if you know anyone who has like amazing things to share, like Ramesh and all my previous guests, feel free to connect them with me because I'll be happy to have them on the show. It's called Insights with These Jumps. So on that note, have a very good evening and a very good weekend. So thank you from me and thank you from Ramesh.
Thank you, everybody. Pleasure. Bye bye.